Yo, this is for you. I am my number one fan. For you, this is for you. I am my number one fan. For you, yo, this is for you. I am my number one fan. For you, I am my number one fan. I'm trying to get you from here to there. I'm trying to show niggas it ain't fair. How I just came up, but you not there. Stuck in the same situation you been in. They got the plug, you got the sound. You not just a groupie that's hanging around. They got the stage, but you bring the lights. It's enough room at the top, we ain't gotta fight.
Welcome, neighbors. Welcome back. It's the Neighbors Podcast Show. Would you like to be my neighbor? Could you be? Would you be? Would you be? Please won't you be my neighbor? Hey, neighbor. Hi. How are you today? I'm fine, thank you. That's good. I'm not wearing a sweater today. You know, you sound a little bit like Mr. Snuffleupagus. Mr. Snuffleupagus? Yes. I think that came on before Mr. Rogers, didn't it? Yeah, it did. Oh. You sure they were the same guys? No, I don't think so. What's up, y'all? What's happening, peoples? Yo, we have another explosive topic for you today. Yes. So, I'm going to read this quote by Coretta Scott King. Read on, my brother. Struggle is a never-ending process. Freedom is never really won. You earn it, and you win it in every generation. So what are we going to talk about today is something that we will continue to fight for and to support. And to celebrate. And we would like for all of you to do the same, one way or another. Today we're going to talk about this particular day, whether or not it's a holiday or not. Because some people celebrate, some people don't. Right. Some states do, some states don't. Right. And now that we're going into the summer, most definitely, the weather is a little hectic. Mm-hmm. You know, we keep going from hot to cold. But we've gone through Memorial Day already. And most of us think the next holiday is July 4th, right? 4th of July, right? But wait a minute. There might be one right there in the middle of those days. Yeah. So, we're talking about Juneteenth. And, a lot of people probably don't know what Juneteenth is. Right. And a lot of us probably do know what it is. But we're going to tell you today exactly what it is. So, Juneteenth is the Independence Day and the Freedom Day of slaves that were kept slaves after the Emancipation Proclamation had came into effect to abolish slavery in January 1st of 1863. Right. In particular, it was one state. Texas was keeping slaves because they didn't acknowledge the Emancipation Proclamation. So Texas would not accept that, and they kept their slaves. They kept their slaves for 2 years, y'all. 2 years. They kept people as slaves after they were freed. So more than 200,000 African Americans were still enslaved in Texas after the Emancipation Proclamation, And then on June 19th, 1865, General Gordon Gangler, along with the Union soldiers, entered Galveston, Texas, and forced them to free their slaves. The reason it's called Juneteenth because it is a combination of June and 19th, which was the day, June 19th, 1965. Right. After that, years later, after everything had went through, Texas was the first state to declare Juneteenth a holiday on January 1st, 1980. And it was followed by a lot of other states, which I'm not going to, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and get into them. A lot of other states such as Alaska, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Idaho, Indiana, Illinois, Idaho, Louisiana. What is that? Oh, that's Kansas. I got lost there for a little bit, Dorothy. Sorry. Kentucky, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri. You get the picture. It was a lot of them, right? Also, which I did not know, that there is a flag that represents Juneteenth.
How many of you knew that?
And you know what? We probably seen this flag and didn't even think any of it.
Right.
So the flag, it has a rectangle on it, At the top of the rectangle, there's blue, and at the bottom, there's red. And there in the middle is a white 5-point star in the middle. Mm-hmm. And that is the representation of Juneteenth. So it also became celebrated by many different ways, such as barbecues, readings, poems, and singing along and stuff like that.
Right.
But a lot of people to this day still doesn't know what Juneteenth is.
No.
Like you might have seen them, different people with different sayings on social media. You know, don't forget Juneteenth. Remember Juneteenth, celebrate Juneteenth. But this is something that really needs to be addressed and shared with our neighbors in our communities.
Right.
Because this was really bad.
Right.
You know, you said somebody was free, and then you decided to take it upon yourself to keep these people for another 2 years.
Yeah.
You know, so how arrogant could you be? You know, but I have to amend Texas for 1980 for declaring that Juneteenth a national holiday. So, is there anything else that you like to bring to the table about Juneteenth?
So it's very interesting as we read and doing our research in reference to Juneteenth. For one, so for most of you who listen to that list of states that our neighbor Arnold mentioned, the one that we live in, Pennsylvania, wasn't on there.
Was on the list.
So, very much so, I didn't know a whole lot about it.
Right.
You hear about it. With me being a church going young man, we never really, even though we acknowledged Juneteenth, but no one really had gone deep into the information.
Correct.
Right? So, but I want to go back a little bit. So, does anyone know when the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation order was made?
Ooh.
What was it?
I don't know.
It was September 22nd, 1862.
Oh, yeah. I remember that date. I think I was there.
Oh, time machine?
Yeah, time machine. Me and what's the guy name with the dog?
The dog?
Yeah, Professor Peabody.
So that's where January the 1st, 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation was supposed to take effect.
Right.
And as our neighbor most eloquently put it, Texas, it took them 2.5 years to actually get that information and or to put it into action.
Correct.
Now, when you think about this, because as I'm going through all the other information about it, it says January the 31st is a date the 13th Amendment was passed by Congress in 1865.
Right.
That officially abolished the institution of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, let's think about that for a second. From 1862 to 1865, that's a long time for that information to travel. And at that time, the United States wasn't that long, right?
Right.
It wasn't that wide. So, and I'm pretty sure mail was getting to and from those states. You get what I mean? You know, getting across the Union, the Confederate, whatever they were going through at that time. I'm pretty sure people was getting the information.
Of course. I think they was using the Pony Express during that time.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Look, you could have, would it take a turtle to get there in 3 years? You get what I mean? But it's interesting that but prior to Juneteenth, meaning June 19th, 1865, and that January, prior to, the Congress officially abolished slavery.
Right.
So, what happened? Why weren't the slaves and or the individuals notified?
Mm-hmm.
Why? To me, that's a very interesting dynamic. To be honest.
Yeah, I think Texas was just like, we're Texas. We're going to do what we want to do. We ain't freeing our slaves.
Right.
Our slaves are going to stay here until whenever we decide.
Yeah.
But it was strange that it wasn't the fact that Texas would have the decision. The federal government, the White House, Washington, D.C., they had to send troops down there.
Right.
To make them free 200,000 people.
Well, and again, everybody has different information. So I have information here where it said it took Confederate soldiers in Western Texas more than 2 months to hear that General Lee has surrendered in the war.
Yeah, but it's better than 2 years.
Right.
You know, at least they heard this so they can get out of Dodge.
So in the same passage that I'm reading, they're talking about that the messengers that were supposed to tell about the Juneteenth and all that. I mean, the Emancipation Proclamation and all that type of stuff. All the messengers were being killed en route.
I can see that.
So it was to prevent information from being relayed, or that the federal government purposely delayed the announcement to Texas in order to get one more cotton harvest out of the slaves.
Because we all know what slavery was really about.
Right.
We all know. We actually not just slavery, but the Civil War itself.
Right.
It was an economic war. It was a financial war. It was based on the fact that they was making so much money off of the back of the African Americans and the blacks down there for the picking of the cotton and tobacco.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't want to say I can understand with that, because I don't want to sympathize with that, because you were using people, you were torturing people for profitable gain.
Yes.
So I don't want to sympathize with the fact that you were making all this stuff and you were treating them very inhumane.
Very much.
You were doing anything that you wanted, because you wasn't treating us like we were people. You was treating us like what we were to you, slaves.
Right.
So they didn't want to give up the fact that they didn't want to lose this money from the cotton and the tobacco.
Now keep this in mind too. They're saying also that in this the message being sent to Texas, they were also urging the freed men to stay right where they were.
Right.
Because then the flip side of that is, hey, stay where you are. You got to stay quiet in this house. You'll have someplace to live, but we're also going to ultimately pay you.
Right.
Supposedly.
Well, they wasn't paying them nothing, though. They was paying them pennies.
Right.
They was paying them just enough to pacify, which continues to go on today.
Right.
But and it still makes me appalled, because I'm like, why? People knew. The powers that be knew. The people, they knew. They just, like I said, they said, I'm Texas. This is what we do here, and you're not going to come in here and tell us what to do.
So I think that this type of information happens today, and I think that's why you hear so much information about fake news.
Correct. Because
at that time, the slaves could have heard about it. Again, the term fake news, I mean, it's not new. That term's not new. So do you believe that type of term being used back then too? Y'all not really free.
Yeah, they've been using the same thing.
Y'all not free. And really, when we think about it today, we're still not free. What is freedom?
Yeah,
what does that look like?
That's to some. I mean, to some it looks like I can buy and purchase things when I need to. I can drive. I have a car. I have a home. I can get married. I can do this. I don't have nobody telling me anything. But do you actually believe that you're not having people tell you things?
Right.
Do you not actually believe that sometimes subliminal messages is coming through TV via commercials and movies and TV shows?
Right.
Because our whole everything is shaped for us.
Right. Right. So I think that's where as we're taking a look at these holidays, you have Memorial Day, where we are acknowledging those that might have fallen in battle.
Correct.
For our freedoms. And for some of us, it's been our uncles, our fathers, our grandfathers, our great-grandfathers, things like that. So we're acknowledging them for them, giving up themselves for us to be where we are today. I'm sorry, bro.
And for FYI, for those of you that don't know how Memorial Day got started, it was started by former slaves. They were for the comrades that died during the Civil War, and former slaves started that as a remembrance.
Right.
And then it just became big because of the World War II, the Vietnam War, the Korean War, and all that stuff. It just became bigger, And then the powers that be snatched on it and picked it up.